Okay, ready? Ready?
Yes. Distract them with all the spinning things. So they're, oh, that's a crane. Whee! It's like a full play center until it falls on you. Yay!
It won't fall.
They should put this stuff in kids' playgrounds so they can learn. Because they'll be like, oh, what's this? It's like, oh, it's something you put your dick in. And it's like, what's... Timing is everything.
Care to elaborate?
No.
Welcome back to Breaking Cars and Happy New Year, everyone.
Today, we're going to be working on the world's greatest engine and replacing the timing belt on it.
Let's get to it.
So why replace the timing belt? The main reason is it is a wear component. Over time, it can get cracks, it can stretch out, and it can break. So the best thing to do is replace it as the scheduled maintenance recommends. So the 2JZ recommends 100,000 kilometer intervals, and we don't know when the last time this was done, but since the engine's just sitting on a stand and it's very easy to access, it isn't a lot of money, so we'll just change it anyways. As preventative maintenance. But as we mentioned earlier, it is very important to have your timing perfect. So if the belt does go, bad things can happen, bend valves and all sorts of stuff. Mind you, this is a non-interference engine, so it doesn't, but look, you'd rather it not snap while you're on a drive and put you in a shit spot. So let's get to it. So start off by pulling out all the spark plugs. This isn't a mandatory thing, but it will make the engine a little easier to turn because the engine won't be under compression. So that's what we've done already. I also cheated off camera and I've already loosened the torque converter bolt, and we use a big Makita gun for that. So this is known to be a very tight bolt for some people and an absolute nightmare, especially in a car where you can't get big guns and tools inside. But we did manage to do it when it was off the car and it wasn't so bad. So yeah. Bigger the breaker bar, the better the everything. So now what we're going to do is we're going to set the timing marks to TDC, which is top dead center. And I'm kind of spitballing it, but what I'm going to try is I'm going to put this down the spark plug hole. So firstly, find something that will fit down the spark plug hole. And once you do, you put it down the cylinder and you let it rest on cylinder number 1. It's very easy to identify on a 1J. It's closest to the front of the engine. If it's a V configuration, you might have to check the stickers under the bonnet or give it a quick Google. But yeah, cylinder number 1 is what you want at TDC. And what you basically want to do is when this object that you use to indicate the top of the cylinder is it's going to go down as per stroke, it's going to come back up, and basically just before it starts going back down again, that will be top dead center. So you pretty much would want to go a rotation maybe twice and just see how the engine behaves and how the object you put in the cylinder 1 behaves. But basically as you realize it's back at top, you need to also check these timing marks have gone with where the manufacturer has recommended. So normally on a 2J, we'll speak about 2Js only to make it simple, the crank will have a mark that will line up with the 0 that's on the timing belt cover. And also there's little notches cut out in the cam gears that will line up with these little sort of castle hats at the top of the rear timing cover. So when that goes bang, 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 you will be at TDC, and you have a second marker to tell you that it is at TDC when this sits at the top and doesn't go back down. So let's get back to it.
So if you're doing this in car, you'll need to remove a whole bunch of stuff like your radiator and your clutch fan to get access to all of this. Now, once you've done that, you'll need to remove your upper and lower timing belt covers. Now, we've already removed our upper timing belt cover. Now, for us to get access to the bottom, we're going to have to remove our harmonic balancer and then go from there. Start by removing the harmonic balancer bolt. Once the bolt is removed, use a harmonic balancer puller tool to remove the harmonic balancer. The balancer is often very tight and won't break free without one. Other tools you will need are your ratchet and sockets, some penetrant for tough bolts, potentially a seal puller if you are doing seals, a friend to give you company, and of course your beverage of choice.
So to get the lower timing cover off, you got 5 bolts. They're just 10mm bolts. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Once you pull that out, you should be able to pull this out and out from underneath the tensioner without having to take the tensioner off. So while you're there with the timing covers off, it's a good time to do other maintenance items on the 2JZ. That would include the cam seals if they're leaking, or the front crank seal or oil pump seals. The water pump is also a good item to change while you're there. The hydraulic tensioners and the bearings associated with the tensioner. So these things can wear over time and start grinding and can fail. So while you've got all this stuff accessible and easy to get to, they're not high expensive items, so just replace them while you're there. That is my honest opinion.
Begin by loosening the two 12mm tensioner bolts. You should notice the timing belt starting to become loose. Remove the tensioner entirely and then carefully remove the belt. Once this is done, remove the idler bearing with a 10mm hex key and inspect the area. In our instance, we saw lots of grime from oil leaks and decided to go ahead and replace the front main seal. To replace the front main seal, remove the crank gear. You should use a puller for this, however, our set did not have the correct bolts and the shops were closed. We managed to gently remove it using screwdrivers and levering it out.
There are numerous ways of removing seals. We use screwdrivers to puncture the seal and pull it out. When doing this, be extremely careful not to damage anything behind the seal. Once the seal is out, this is the perfect time to give everything a good clean. Use degreasers, brushes, and even a scouring pad on tough stains. Once all the areas have been hit, give it a gentle spray with water and dry the area properly before continuing.
Find something roughly the same size as the seal and gently tap the seal in. Make sure the object is not sharp and be gentle, as it is easy to damage the seal on installation. Most importantly, take your time, as you don't want to be dealing with the oil leaks later. You want the seal to go in as evenly as possible. Tap it in until it's about 0.5 mm from flush to the oil pump housing. Rub a bit of oil on the inside, then gently tap the crank timing gear back onto the crank. Installation is very similar to the front main seal, but it is made a little bit easier because there is only one way that the crank gear can go on due to the keys.
So the perfect example of replacing a worn bearing is actually our timing belt tensioner bearing. So let me give it a spin, hopefully you can hear it. Now that metal on metal noise is not good. And so here's our new one, and hopefully you won't hear it. Which is why we're going to stick this on. Install the idler bearing onto the engine first. Use Loctite 242 and torque to 34 Newton meters or 25 foot-pound. Then loosely fit the belt tensioner itself. You will need to adjust the belt as it goes on, so do not tighten fully yet. Take your time when putting the belt on, especially ensuring that the cam gears don't turn. You can see when we first installed the belt, we needed to readjust the belt so that the belt was slack on the side with the tensioner and not on the side where it goes directly up to the cam gear. We did this by moving the belt one tooth over to the tensioner side from the crank timing pulley. Once the belt is in the right position, finish tightening the tensioner by torquing it to 26 Newton meters or 20 foot-pounds.
If you are reusing your old tensioner, you will need to use a press or a vise to compress the tensioner before installation. We used a new tensioner, so all we had to do was pull the pin to allow it to engage. After this, temporarily reinstall the crank bolt. Rotate the engine by the crank bolt and check the markings across the 3 gears. You should see the alignment between the cam gears and the markings on the rear timing cover. At the same time, you should see the alignment between the crank gear marking and the oil pump housing mark as well.
Now remove the crank bolt and reinstall the lower timing cover. We painted the lower timing cover and didn't want to scratch it on the drive belt tensioner, so we quickly removed the 3 bolts for the drive belt tensioner to make it nice and easy to install the lower timing cover.
Like the crank gear, the harmonic balancer can only go onto the crank in one direction, which is determined by the key. Gently tap the harmonic balancer on. It is useful to spray the shaft with WD-40 to help lubricate it as it goes on. Just make sure you keep wiping it along the way so you don't have any get onto the belt later. Reinstall the crank bolt. This needs to be torqued to an enormous 324 Newton meters or 239 foot-pounds. We plan to torque to spec once the engine is back in the car and we can use the car in gear to avoid the engine turning. Once it's done, give the engine a rotation again to make sure that everything is aligned before firing it up.
We were able to complete the process from experience. However, it is important to refer to the repair or service manual of the car before making a first attempt. Check the links in the description below. The timing belt replacement is a delicate operation and you'd rather not f it up.
I have an engine on my shoulder. Let's just pretend we're carrying it.
Dude, I'll carry it with this. I'll carry it with this.
Welcome back to Breaking Cars. This engine's heavy. It's giving me a hernia.
Just the problems of the world's greatest engine.
Yeah, alright, we're gonna just throw it in the car now.
You let go of it.
Oh, sorry, man. No, you let go of it. No, both let go of it.
No, this is hovering.
Catch it. Oh, we gotta replace the sump
Oh no.
because my muscles broke them.
Dude, it'd be a shame if it was a turbo sump.
Dude, if it was an RB26, it was actually just broken sitting here.
No. It would have been broken already.
Dude, it's like an RB26. It's got no oil on the top of the engine.